All right, can we begin, please? As Bud and I talked about how we might approach the program tonight, he came up with over 100 slides. To Bud, his art, he is his art. And so they were his art, he is his art. And so they were synonymous. When we started to measure the time to go over those 100 slides with all he has to say about it, we went about 4 or 5 hours. So, right or wrong, my advice prevailed, and we began to cut in. My advice prevailed, and we began to cut in and edit. And so, right or wrong, I imposed an order and the kind of approach to the incredible range and scope of his work. I also prevailed in the belief that as a man is an important dimension of his art. And so I hope tonight we can begin to work to bring out both dimensions of the man and his art. I think most of you know Bud, but very briefly, a couple of biographical details. At Bridgeport, he was born and brought up here. And although he lives in Fairfield, he didn't question this remark. I was surprised, and I said, I suspect you see Fairfield as an extension of Bridgeport. How come you didn't object to that?
Well, I just, didn't pick it up.
Oh.
It
Well,
isn't, and there is a little bit, yeah, there is.
Well, you're very much a
And
part of
so
Bridgeport
I
now.
would go very cautiously when I mention it. I said, well, where do you live now? I live in Fairfield. Oh.
Well, as many of you know, he spent the last 4 years on a one-year project working the mural
Typical.
in the Bridgeport 6 to 1936. As a man, again, he is husband and father, Marie his wife, John his son, who is married living in Vermont. Both have always been a part of his art. I assume every artist is to some degree torn between his art and his personal life. But in this case, the marriage of art. Bud has found fulfillment as a husband and father, and Marie and John, in return, I suppose, have been supported and fulfilled by his art. But we're here to look at the artist, to meet the artist, and while his achievements, I can't list them, the honors are long and significant. Quickly, honors are long and significant. Quickly, Fairfield Artist of the Year this year, 2 paintings in the Municipal Court, Washington, D.C., another in the Corcoran Museum in Washington, another in the Metropolitan Museum in New York, and work in collections
You have
throughout
to remember,
Fairfield
these are in storage somewhere.
County. Work in collections
You have
throughout
to remember,
Fairfield
these are in storage somewhere.
County. We'll get to the stories behind some of them, I think. In truth, I guess outside these circles, he's still relatively unknown. And I guess part of my interest and concern in Bud is that he may be the artist of our time. Maybe a personal view, maybe some of you share it. Yet in an age
Thank you, best.
of democratic and commercial art, legions of artists, some here tonight, and would-be artists, the true artists who work without the necessary financial support and artistic recognition. Bud has not yet received that recognition that I believe his art and his artistic vision merit. He has all his life been, and this is your title, I think, the worker as artist, supporting himself and his family.
I'd like to be considered a working artist.
I don't know, I say the working artist, yes, the artist works, but the worker who must work to support his art is another thing. Working the full day and the full week, and then, and only then, sometime, somehow trying to find time to continue your art. Somehow trying to find time to continue your art.
I've always flown on the fringe of the thing, keeping out of trouble, not having the courage to really go out and jump into the career.
Yes, yeah, I respect those people, those fools too. At any rate, now retired, he's finally able to devote himself full-time to his art, giving his time and some of his materials to this 4-year project in the Bridgeport Library, now nearing completion. Tonight, I think, represents for him as well as for us an opportunity to reflect back what he's done and where he may go next with his art. So we'll begin, we'll work through the selected slides, and we'll try to do three things, and we'll see how we succeed. The first is we'll try to show a chronological selection of the works covering almost 30 years. We'll attempt to pointing out recurring images, motifs, themes. Second, by focusing in on a few key paintings, we'll try to reveal how Bud conceives, develops a painting. It's interesting to Bud as well as for us, I think, to see how the camera eye, to see how the camera eye discovers layers and relationships in the paintings. I'll rush over with the photographs, and Bud will begin to see his painting in a different perspective. The camera, I think, allows him to see maybe how the audience can see, perceive a painting. Well, certainly one of the unique dimensions of his art is its openness to the camera, to the viewer, to see the painting in a new and personal way each time we come to it. As Bud's art is in process of discovery, we'll see this as we go through and talk about the paintings, so the viewer is encouraged to participate in this discovery. And then thirdly, we'll end up with a few slides of the most recent work, and we hope to suggest where may be the direction of his art as he completes the mural and moves on to a new end.
Good.
So we'll start then with the earlier work, and we go back to the early 50s. Yeah, we have to get it on. And to the Bridgeport environment. Bud, you want to tell us something about the early paintings? We get the lights out, John?
This is a bad light. Mr. Chalk, this
Yeah.
is a bad light here.
Yes. Let's see if we can
That
get
hurts
it
the
out.
painting.
What I wanted to say, about something about Alan Chalk here, too. Alan,
You didn't tell me.
about something about Alan Chalk here, too. Alan,
You didn't tell me.
Alan Chalk is a creative writer in the Western High School. And I consider Alan and Norma Chalk as family. So you can see when all this build-up about Bud Riley, I really consider Alan as family and part of it.
Better.
Bud Riley, I really consider Alan as family and part of it.
Better.
And also, I consider Alan as a fellow explorer. And with each of these works, he was right. With each of these works, when he came down with the camera and took a slide or a picture of it, often I found things in the painting that I didn't know were there. We're talking now about Holiday. This was a good fortune and a workhorse painting for us. It was the first one that was really in, not the first one, the second one actually. It was in a type of kind of national type show. The only second time that I got into an exhibit that could be considered or recognized exhibit. And we did win an award with it. And the painting was included in a Connecticut tour, which gave it a lot of exposure. Basically, the painting is what I started with. I was interested in the beginning in the picture and developing a picture. And I was always interested in content and therefore sort of painting a picture with a little story involved in it. Now, the story sometimes happened. A picture with a little story involved in it. Now, the story sometimes happened. And in this case, it was one of the cases where an early point where the story just bloomed out of a work of something that's surrounding me. These paintings are all related to my own environment. This is Seaside Park. As you can see, it's a thunderstorm coming up. I discovered that the people seemed to be festival, and so I called it Holiday. And that's the story.
J Street, I think, represented you call it a departure, discovery.
This was a kind of picture. It wasn't as important to me as what was happening as it went along. The picture began to dictate to me. I found that to paint freely and without any pre-planning. Now, this happens to be the same sort of thing as the earlier paintings. It's part of the environment. This was the corner, I call the painting J Street. And it was part of, it was really Johnson Street and Ridge Avenue. I think this was the first one that Stephen Dohanas saw in the first Barnum Festival show. And I think we juried together. I was interested, first of all, in, I painted it from memory. I've never painted on location, and I've never painted from photographs. But in this case, painting from memory, this corner of Johnson Street. I suddenly discovered this little figure of the girl being painted and looking like a little blossom here on this rather grim, shabby, run-down corner. The story then began to develop in my own mind from the painting, rather reading back into the painting something. Something had just happened there by accident. This little girl just came to be there, and from that, the story of that developed from it. I thought of it as Easter Sunday. Now, the little girl shows this in her brand new clothes and bright pink coat. The man standing or leaning against an old beat-up car is unaware probably that it is leaning against an old beat-up car is unaware probably that it is even Easter Sunday. And he looks at her, at this little girl, with sort of a strange wonderment, and when, you know, why all this brightness all of a sudden in this dim corner? And then he may go back and think about his own childhood. And it may do something for him. And it may do something for him. The three little boys there, two of them are dressed in ordinary everyday clothes, but the third little boy with the Sunday newspapers is dressed partly for Easter Sunday too. And the lady walking around the corner on Ridge Avenue there with a pot of flowers, also part of the Easter.
This too was